Okay, roll call. Susan Kiefer,
Present.
Kevin Keating,
Here.
Patty Gents,
Here.
Marissa Shepard,
Here.
Marta Terence.
Present.
All right. Land acknowledgement. Jackson County Library Services acknowledges that its libraries are located within the traditional lands of the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians and the Modoc Nation, as well as the Shasta, Takelma, and Lakawa people, whose descendants are now identified as members of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. We take this moment to recognize the indigenous peoples whose traditional lands are where residents of Jackson County live today. JCLS is committed to fostering understanding, deep respect, and honor for Indigenous people, and we encourage you to learn more about the land you reside on. For more information, go to jcls.org/land. All right. So I believe we are ready. And Josh, first up, how are you today?
So far, so good.
All right. So tell us about the background and skills that qualify you for the position of Jackson County Library District Interim Director, in addition to what's listed on your resume.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. So I think, addition to the resume, I think what's important is when we're looking for an interim director, we're looking for someone who can keep the door open and uncover strengths in the organization so that when we have a permanent director, that director is able to hit the ground running. And we ensure that interim position ensures a smooth transition to the permanent role. And I think for me, those skills and strengths have been proven in the last 9 months. So I started 9 months ago, just shy of 9 months. And in that time, I've had two open supervisor positions. We've had a um, public information situation, an incident. We've had my role itself is new to the organization as part of the restructure. And with all of that in the air, I am, I would personally say that we've had a lot of success in the community engagement department. And I think that stems from a handful of things. And the first one being that kind of consistent transition, in a new role. Coming into the new role, we had two vacancies. And so that transition from former supervisors on two different teams to new supervisors, I was the one who filled those shoes. And it definitely was a little bit of work out of the gate. One of the positions was vacant when I started immediately, and then the other was vacant about 2 months after. And so juggling that and ensuring that our community engagement department had everything they needed in order to continue functioning and providing the services to our patrons in our communities was paramount. And with that, I think like I said, I think I'd proven that I did a good job of transitioning the departments to new supervisors so that they were able to, once those supervisors came in, they had the tools and the skills they needed to be successful with their own teams and make those teams their own. Um, and with that, part of that was communication. I mean, it was a heavy period where I was with the teams almost on a daily basis or communicating in some fashion. Of course, naturally, all of those questions and all that information came up to me as their acting supervisor. And so it was required, but at the same level, it was, it could have been brushed off. But in my experience, that's the most important time to take that boots on the ground approach. And so um, communication, I think, is one of those skills that is just going to be paramount to anything else. Additionally, it was the experience leading marketing departments, specifically. And then as part of my MBA, there's an emphasis in management there, so that those skills and experience were acquired over the course of that education. And so being able to put those in practice to effectively lead the team during that time of transition, um, just that was, again, that was also, I would say not as paramount as communication, but that's number two, right? Is like, how do it's kind of servant leadership, right? Like going down and being involved with the day to day to understand what the needs are so that we can continue that flow. I think if you look, after looking at my resume, I think you'll see a lot of that appears in there. And I think it's more just like, that's kind of like a byproduct of communication and that servant leadership. And I think the last thing is the ability to engage staff. Um, and I think that's kind of for me, the kind of the final piece to that trifecta is how do we motivate and keep staff engaged while there is fluctuation in what they're doing, right? There was no, every day was a new day, so it wasn't static. And so and part of that for me, like helping motivate folks around me is just, again, going in there and get my hands dirty and kind of like figuring out what it's going to take and figuring out what people are going through and coming up with creative solutions to figure that out. So I'm a very solutions oriented, and when problems arrive, it's not how do we fix a problem? It's like how do we find a solution? And so that mindset, that solutions-based mindset, was another skill that I was able to apply right when I came in. So
Right. Very good. Um, what experience do you have adapting to a new environment, and how will you approach learning about the issues that impact Jackson County Library Service? I realize it's since you've been
mhm.
working at JCLS, you might want to turn this a little bit just toward the new position that you would be occupying.
Yeah, so there's that, and I've worked for a handful of small businesses or startups, and when you do that, um, you have to be nimble. You have to be ready to go. You have to be ready to um, adapt to whatever environment you're in. And then when you're leading in those environments, it's how do you uncover the strengths of the people? And so, for me, it's again, another that servant leadership aspect is going in and visiting people and understanding how processes work, how things are operating so that we can uncover the strengths of our staff. Always staff and people are going to be the most important part of any organization. And in those environments, the first thing I try to do is, okay, what are our strengths here? And then after that, it's understanding kind of the nature of the environment and then how do we capitalize on those strengths? And so, um, applying it to this, I think again, it would, like I said earlier, it would be very similar of, we've got a lot of newness, we've got a lot of new things happening. Um, I think we start with this kind of, okay, let's uncover some of the strengths and let's get a better understanding of the big picture so that we can start to get this ball rolling and transition into so that when we get a permanent director, one, we can let them know the strengths of our organization, right? I think that's going to be very valuable in that hiring process, right? Like, what do we have here that we are so good at? And what would a director be able to bring in to enhance the people and the strengths that we already have? So, I mean, that would be my approach to it. Yeah, I apologize if I kind of strayed from the question there, but that's, yeah, I'll stop with that.
Right.
Okay. I get to ask Josh the next two questions.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, there's 11 total. So
Perfect.
we don't have like 27 or something, so we're good. Josh, what approach and steps would you take initially to get to know the staff, build cohesion, and set priorities in an interim appointment. And again, as Susan mentioned, it's a little different for you because you're the internal candidate. But there's areas that maybe you have not had an opportunity to work with as closely.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thanks for the question. I think I've already taken some of those steps. And so I think that's, a real positive. I've been able to get to 13 of the 15 branches. I apologize, White City and Shady Cove. It will happen before the end of the year. I know, Marta, you're shaking your head there. So I mean, step one is just going and talking with people. And building those relationships as a person. Um, I know it can be easy sometimes to kind of stay up in the office and work away all day, but you really have to, in order to understand what staff are going through, where the needs of the organization are, you've got to be out in, you got to be out in the branches, you got to be behind the scenes, and you got to really, and frankly, I've been doing the best I possibly can. It's um, it's a priority for me, and I feel like that I've done a fairly good job of trying to meet everybody, and especially too with those community listening sessions we did. It extends beyond staff, right? It's everyone. It's our communities. Like when we're talking about engaging, it's because our communities are essentially a part of what we do, right? I mean, they're everything that we do. So it's without the people visiting our libraries, without understanding their needs or wants, then it makes it difficult for staff. And so it's like stretching that out into the community beyond going and visiting staff. And so to give you kind of a concrete answer, I would definitely start by wrapping up those 15 branch visits. I would, I was thinking about earlier today, provide a platform to make myself available for staff and continual updates. We've done a good job of kind of keeping those updates frequent. But then providing an additional platform, and whether that's like a once a week or bi-weekly situation where we can give updates on kind of the process or what's going on, and then have a little Q&A because we are a large system, as everybody here knows. It's impossible. I wish I could clone myself and send myself everywhere, but that's impossible. So we'll have to use the technology we have. But at the end of the day, it's just keeping an open door, I think. And that's how we're, step one to engage staff is try and go shake hands with everybody. And then after that, it's keeping an open door and inviting the conversation.
Great, thank you. My next question for you, Josh,
Mm-hmm.
is that you have touched on this in your previous answers, I should say. What is your philosophy on leadership? Explain what it means to be both a good leader and a good team member, and how you would work with the administration team, the leadership team, to tackle day-to-day issues.
Wonderful. I do have, actually, I'll send this. I have a leadership profile that I'll send to the board after this. But my philosophy is pretty simple, and it's servant leadership. Practicing servant leadership every single day. I would never ask anyone to do something that I wouldn't do myself. And then going out and understanding the needs of the people. Like I said, people are the most important thing to me. Without people, you don't have an organization, you don't have a community, you don't have anything else. And I guess that's why I was attracted to the community engagement manager position in the first place, because it's connecting. And I think, as a leader, it can be easy to be disconnected, but I don't see that at all. I see it as an opportunity. And then as a team member, it's the same thing. Good leaders are also vulnerable. It's the common saying, know what you don't know. And then that's the most important thing you can do, right? Because when you know what you don't know, then you know how to lean on people to get those answers. And it makes everybody stronger, and it makes everybody more empowered to do the work that they're capable of doing. And so, between that servant leadership philosophy and the vulnerability, I think that would be my approach on leadership, and then as a team member as well. I understand that my experience doesn't stretch back as far as some of the candidates here. But I personally, I think that's great because we have a team in-house that is so incredibly capable, that I would feel comfortable leaning on them to answer any questions, right? We have, and that's across the board, right? That's everyone in the organization is exceptionally capable. And by inviting that vulnerability is inviting people to kind of like lift everyone up. So yeah, that I guess that's I'll keep it short so we still have time. But yeah, that's I mean it's servant leadership, meeting people where they're at, making those connections, and then vulnerability, being vulnerable and knowing what you don't know.
Great. Thank you so much, Josh.
Thanks, Patty.
Thank you. I will be asking the next couple of questions, and I was smiling because I still have not made it to all of the 15 branches myself. Weather or circumstance has gotten in the way. So,
Well, we'll have to change that soon, Marta.
absolutely. I hear there is a pin that folks get after having visited all
Yes.
15. Um, you may have started touching on this topic already,
hmm
but could you please share what are your strengths and experience in personnel management and human resources?
Yeah, so I think the most recent experience and example of the strengths is coming here. You're right. I did kind of touch on it when I first got here. We had an open position, excuse me, and then shortly afterwards, the position became vacant, and we had to fill that. And that vacancy was due to a termination. And so, that was part of my responsibility. And um, and filling in for that and what that meant for the organization. So, as part of that, it's not an easy, nothing's an easy decision when it comes to that kind of stuff. It was difficult, but I think, at the end of the day, we have to do what's best for the organization. And I can confidently say that,
And shoes.
after we got through that initial time frame and there's some hiccups early on and that's just part of me having to fill three roles technically at the same time. Um, I am incredibly happy with the outcome. And for those who attended the recent Rogue Reads, I think that's a very an exemplary, like, you know, it's the perfect example of what we were able to do in a short amount of time. And that stemmed from some issues, and then it turned into, okay, now we're training, we're onboarding, we're getting people up and running. It's again, we're being a people first person. I'm always looking for ways to keep people first. Like I said, it is never my intention to come in and make things difficult or take quick action. I think when it comes to people, we need to be incredibly thoughtful. And so, it was a tough decision, but at the end of the day, like going through that process, it was a thoughtful process, and I'm happy with everyone we have now. The community engagement team is thriving. Everyone across the board, I can speak for them, is doing incredible work. And then just being a part of the organization, I can say everybody in the organization is doing incredible work. But yeah, but I think that comes from deliberate and thoughtful response to all personnel decisions.
Mhm. Thank you. Um, Also on the topic of personnel and
hmm
people, but more organizationally, could you please share with us what is your knowledge and skill set working with the introduction of a new union, working with union employees, and or supporting an organization through a labor contract negotiation, such as the one we're looking at in 2026?
Yeah. Well, admittedly, I have not had much experience with it up until recently. Um, However, I want to kind of jump back to the first point on the first question, and communication is going to be key going through all of this. Part of that process is negotiation, and negotiation means showing up, having the conversation, having difficult conversations, and coming out where we have we have a solution from both sides. And so, I don't have any direct experience with unionization, but I do have a lot of experience with communication. And for me, that's going to be the most important part of this whole process. And, I hope that I've already began to build relationships with folks that represent the union. And I'd like to continue working towards that, because I think at the end of the day, everybody wants what's best for people. Again, it's that people first concept. And so I think if we communicate effectively, we can come to an agreement that everybody's happy with.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. I have the next few questions.
Hmm.
How would you communicate and interact with staff and volunteers to assure they are valued and appreciated and help them feel confident that JCLS will continue to thrive and grow?
I will. Thank you, Marissa. I'll give you an example of something we did today. So, for those who don't know, today is Staff Appreciation Day. So I do want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who's on the call right now. I see a lot of staff names, so thank you for everything you do. Thank you for showing up to this conversation. It means you care. It means that we are a mission-driven organization. To take time on your Friday afternoon to be here, like I said, I see a lot of familiar names. Um, it means you're passionate, and I want to foster that among the organization and give everybody the tools they need to succeed. And that passion's naturally going to extend in our communities. But today I went and just dropped off a little thank you, little staff appreciation. Thank you to everyone on my team. Drop something off to the admin team. If you worked remotely today, enjoy a little snack for me on your desk on Monday. But I think it's the little things like that, right? It's if we continue to build on the culture of kindness that already exists here, and that is going to naturally just perpetuate into our patrons and the people we serve. So, it's simple things. It's simple things. We can put out press releases, we can do all this stuff, but at the end of the day, it's about taking the time to go down and do something and talk to someone and just making them feel welcome. I know our community resources team just does a fantastic job of this, and kind of emulate some of the work that they're doing. So yeah, I mean, it's the little things, Marissa, I think is how we make people feel appreciated, our volunteers, our staff, and that will all that'll easily filter into our communities.
Thank you for that answer.
Hmm.
Um, the next one is the Jackson County Library District's mission is to connect everyone to information, ideas, and each other. What does that mean to you, and how would you work to support our mission?
Oh, Marissa, well, I live that every day, by the nature of my job, which is great. But I think I want to kind of focus in, especially right now, on the connection piece and kind of take a different look at it. Like kind of what I've been saying earlier, for me, connection, connect everyone. Everyone means everyone. And I feel, right now there's an opportunity for a lot of internal connection. And so, as a part of the internal engagement committee, that's something we're really focusing on right now. And the team has just rolled out this incredible little button program where every department and branch makes a button, and then we get to exchange those as kind of an opportunity to open a conversation with someone you may or may not interact with or get the opportunity to. But then beyond that, it's connecting in our internal staff through conversation, through shared experience, and allowing a platform for everyone's ideas to be heard. And so, we do that with my team. I've got we've got weekly meetings. It's kind of an expectation for everyone across the board. We're constantly connecting with each other. We just submitted our budget for the department, and part of that was all of us getting together, um, and saying, how do we, we recognize we want to kind of save some money this year and like come up with some creative ways to propose a budget that makes fiscal sense, but then also allows us to have these shared resources. And so we all got together, on a Friday afternoon, Thursday afternoon, or whatever, a couple weeks ago, and it was just amazing to see because we were bouncing off, hey, we've got some budget for, we want to do this, we want to do that, and it's like, what do you guys think about this? How can we help each other do that? So just little things like that. Again, I think it's the little things when we're talking about that mission. And I think specifically in this time period, I'd really like to focus on that internal connection. How do we connect as an organization?
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Josh, can you?
I heard the first part, Kevin. Sorry, you might be
Okay.
breaking up.
Can you hear me okay right now?
Yes, yes, there we go.
Okay, great. So I have the ninth question.
Okay.
So public libraries serve people across the political and the ideological spectrum. How would you ensure that your professional decisions remain focused on community service rather than personal beliefs?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think you nailed it on the head. We serve everyone. And I think what is important is to continue to look at the people in our communities and offer opportunities to invite everyone to the table. When we go, we are actually currently developing this is kind of a little bit on the radar here. I guess it's kind of in the back burner, or not the back burner. We're picking up some steam, but we're developing a partnership guide that allows us to identify um, various elements of community health so that we can then tailor some of our partnerships to address or our programs or whatever the case may be to address the concerns and the needs of the community. And so I am really excited for when that rolls out. Give me a few months. But I think you're right in saying it's important because libraries are for everybody. And I think I'd work really closely with specifically, we've got the community engagement team, our outreach team. We've got our language access team who presented at the last board meeting. And then we're building a really great relationship too with a programs coordinator to help kind of identify some of the needs in the programming area that we can address some of that and make sure that we are delivering equitable outreach and programming and that our facilities are meeting the needs of everyone. So, part of that too is ADA accessibility, language accessibility. We've kind of been, with the Spanish language access coordinator position, we've been addressing some of that language access. So, and then facilities, right? We've got ADA situations with IT. There's some accessibility things we can always improve on. But I think it's really just it's understanding the needs. Again, it's opening the door. What are you looking for? What are we asking the questions to start, and then reviewing that information and saying, okay, well, we have all these tools at our disposal. How can we, meet the needs? And for me personally, we're a neutral public space, and I think that our mission is to serve everyone, and there's no room for discrimination in that.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good answer. So, number 10, tell us about a time you had to deal with and resolve a difficult issue.
Yeah. I will kind of go back to that early one. That's been a fairly difficult one. We had to let someone go for uh, reasons that I won't get into. But that was tough. I don't think nobody enjoys it. Um, but that was, it was what is best for the organization and what, how do we operate within that purview? And I will give you another one that I think you're fairly familiar with. But we had an incident in December of last year, and that was difficult, to say the least. But I think at the end of the day, it was just showing up because you can't, if there's a difficult issue, it doesn't just go away magically. So no, I was taking calls on Christmas Eve from media and reporters, and I'm not trying to brag or say anything like that, but that was what was needed at the time, and that's what I think had to be done in order to move forward. And I think it would have been just as easy to say, nope, can't do it, not right now. But that just would have been prolonging the inevitable. And we just got it done. So, the short answer is meeting things head on. We've had a handful of those already, which is fine. It's part of any sort of leadership role or any organization. But avoiding it is the wrong answer. And so, whatever, just taking it in stride, leaning on your teammates, leaning on those around you. Um, there is no, in my opinion, there's really no such thing as a new situation. So understanding that there is someone out there who has experience or guidance, and allowing, again, having the taking the being vulnerable to taking that advice is important, and then meeting it head on. It's going to be more uncomfortable the longer you wait. So that's how I approach and resolve difficult situations. And there's no such thing as a perfect resolution. It's not going to come to you right out of the gate. And so again, you have to nip it in the bud. You say, what are we talking about here? Let's bring everybody to the table. We've had a few things recently. Um, but I think by addressing them early on and working towards an understanding, and again, going back to that, taking the time to understand the entire story and then working towards a solution rather than seeing a problem, is the most valuable thing you can do in conflict. I believe there are two types of conflict. There's task conflict and there's personal conflict. Um, and if if you're a library staff, then you've probably heard this before, but the task conflict can be a very positive thing when you have two ways of doing something differently. That's what produces something, a synergistic solution there, and you come out with a better outcome. But then you have to allow people to kind of have that conflict, and you have to be comfortable talking about that type of conflict, because at the end of the day, it can be a very positive thing. If you let it fester, if you let it stew, that turns into a personal conflict, and then now we're repairing relationships, and that's a totally different thing that's a little more difficult to crawl back from. So, um, providing folks with a safe space to have task conflict, and then and then resolving it quickly is kind of the most important thing you can do when it comes to that.
Hey, thank you.
Of course. Thank you, Kevin.
All right. So are there questions that we haven't asked you that you think we should have, or that you would like to make sure we have that information? And do you have questions for us?
Yes. Well, I have been following this closely, as you can imagine. So I don't have any super specific questions. I want to thank you all for taking the time and asking me the handful of questions. I really do appreciate it. One of the questions I do have is, you've laid out a handful of priorities between some of the meetings and then the job description, everything, which are fantastic. I'm curious if you have a plan to evaluate the success of some of those at this point.
Marta, go ahead.
While I cannot speak for the whole board, one of the things I think we should be looking for is whether some of the pain points our amazing staff leadership is encountering without having a permanent director in place, whether it's certain contract authority decision points or needing to have somebody in the director's seat just for certain parts of various processes, as well as some external engagements. To have somebody in the role of a director to attend, say,
Sure.
foundation-related activities or to sit in on some statewide engagements to make sure that ball doesn't get dropped until the permanent director is hired. We need to make sure that the pain points that are existing are addressed. And then I think we can focus on the post-stability improvement.
Wonderful. Thank you. Patty, you're on mute right now. Just so
You
you
have to, there you go.
Sorry. Whoops. Let me get rid of this. I also am a big believer, as I'm sure many people on this call are, and I know Josh, you are, that all goals should be measurable and all outcomes should be quantifiable. And so we will be putting together, fleshing out some of the goals so that they can be measured and the outcomes can be quantified.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I'm assuming that's kind of in tandem with the strategic roadmap and the strategic planning that we have.
Yes.
And first and foremost, it will be in tandem with the interim, because I think it will be a two-way conversation. Because for
Sure.
the permanent position, the goals are usually discussed and negotiated
Yeah.
in a two-way manner also.
Thank you. Okay, and the second question I have is it's twofold. And I think Marta, you kind of touched on it already, but what is one thing an interim director can do during week one to have an impact? And then what challenges and opportunities do you feel most need a steady hand during the transition?
I'm
Say
going
the
to point
last,
to the chair for this one.
What was
Go.
that, Susan?
Oh, I didn't quite get the last part of your question. Would you repeat it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have week one. What can we have the biggest impact in week one? And then after that, are there any challenges or opportunities that you feel need a most steady hand or the most attention while we're moving towards that process of a permanent director?
I can address that if nobody else is.
Ed?
What I think anyway, and I speak for myself, week one is really going to be two things: gaining the confidence of the staff and gaining the confidence of the public, by probably making some statements either to the press and then having a meeting with the staff and just giving them the assurance that the ship is moving in the right direction. Second thing is probably the two most sensitive things that we are dealing with right now are the investigations and HR matters in general, and then union negotiations.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin.
So those are my opinion. Yeah, thank you.
I don't disagree with Kevin. I think you will have an advantage over an outsider coming in, since you already have a relationship with the administrative team. I see our staff as having divisions in various places and figuring out how to work toward overcoming those divisions, I think will be quite important.
Okay.
Any other questions for Josh or Marta?
You mentioned newness several answers back in the beginning of the call. Can you please just briefly elaborate more on what you meant by that? Because I can bet that the 5 board members may have interpreted that very differently. So can you please share
Sure.
what that meant to you in the context of what the system is looking at right now?
Sure. Yeah. So, I've been in a leadership role in one form or another for over a decade. I read the resumes. I looked at some of the other candidates' profiles, and I can see a couple decades plus, right? Um, and when it comes to newness, it's newness to the organization, primarily. But I don't see that, honestly see that as a strength, a newness to the area. Um, I see that as a strength because I think it gives me some form of an objective look at things more so. 9 months into something, it takes 18 months to get settled into a role. And, halfway there, I still have some of these influences from previous experience and leadership experience. And so newness in the sense that it's new to kind of understanding. Um, well, I guess, yeah, that's a great point. Newness to me is newness to the area. So, well, admittedly, again, I don't have the connections with, we've got 15 branches in 15 different cities. So already though, I've been making efforts to make connections with some of those leaders, those local leaders. And I think that's kind of where my head was at, right? We've been building up relationships with a handful of civic leaders and folks around town as quickly as I can. But again, in 9 months, you can only do so much. And so that's kind of where my head was at with that comment.
Thank you for
Yeah.
elaborating. I'm 9 years and 5 days in on this job, and I still get called new by some partners in Jackson County. So it's all
Yeah.
relative.
It's
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
it's relative. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, we have a seconds left. Anybody
Wonderful.
else want to ask? All right, I think we did our timing pretty well on this one. It's been great hearing your responses to these questions and getting a better sense for just what you've been doing while you've been here for 9 months and what more we can look forward to as we move past this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for your time. I want to thank the board. Thank you, everybody, for being present today. It means a lot. Like I said, I see a lot of familiar names. So thank you. Thanks for your commitment to the organization, everybody. Um, One way or another, I'll see y'all on Monday. I look forward to keep doing the great work that we're doing here.
Thank you so much. And for the
Of
benefit
course.
of everybody dialing in, also, this is a public study session. We're interviewing 3 candidates. We have the exact same set of questions for all of our candidates, and we're going to take a break, and I'll just have my camera off for the break, and we'll welcome the next candidate, I believe, at 5 sharp. Susan, does that sound about right?
Sounds just perfect, actually.
Thank you,
All right,
Josh.
Okay. Yeah.
thanks
Thank
very
you.
much, Josh.
Thank you.
Wait,
What?
one more thing before we break. Can we remember to introduce ourselves before the next one?
That's a
I
great
know Josh
idea.
knows us, so it wasn't that big of a deal. But
You're
yeah, I just
absolutely
figured
right.
we
I have
we
to.
were so comfortable that we forgot. But yeah, next time
I,
let's do at least a quick intro. But yeah,
yep,
break time. I agree. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think
Thank
you're
Thank you.
right.
you.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. So I'm Susan Kiefer. I'm the president of the board. I've been serving for way too long, but libraries are my passion. Kevin, next.
Hi, Frank. Nice to meet you. I'm the vice president of the board of directors here, and glad you could make it. Very glad.
Marta?
Good afternoon, Frank. Thank you for your interest in the interim director position. My name is Marta Terence, and I've served on the board since first being appointed in July of 2024, and then when elected to the position since May 2025. Patty?
Hi, Frank. I'm Patty Jensen, and I'm the newest member of the board. Also started officially on July 1 of 2025. And thank you for, as Marta shared, your interest in coming today and talking to us.
Absolutely. Marissa?
And I'm Marissa Shepard. I teach chemistry at RCC, and I've served on the board for a few years now. So thank you again for your interest.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Appreciate it.
Right.
I also have to say I appreciate having served on boards and reported to boards. This is kind of like the Confucius curse: "May you live in interesting times." There are elected positions that then you're not uncompensated, and this is when you quote unquote earn your money as a board. So I'm sorry you're going through this process, but I really appreciate your service to the community.
Right. So let us commence with getting to know you better. Can you please tell us more about the background and skills that qualify you for this position of the interim director for this library district? I know you had a long career at St. Mary's, which is not a completely different sort of institution, but it's not quite the same as a big library system like this. And you might want to flesh out things that aren't necessarily on your resume.
Sure. So I've had 4 kind of major iterations in my professional life. One when I was quite young. I graduated from college and was offered a job by a trustee of my university to learn the textile business. And I needed that job right after college, and my wife was going through medical school. So somebody had to pay tuition, so I learned the textile industry. I was 22 years old when this gentleman took me under his wing, and it was one of the few large textile manufacturing companies left in the New England area. We had 1,200 employees, and after a year, I had 260 of those employees as a direct report, and had to learn that industry. I knew nothing about it really, and became quite proficient at it, and did that for 7 years. Then we moved to Oregon from Rhode Island, and I started teaching at St. Mary's and did that from 1989 to 2005. We had, unfortunately, a similar incident where we had a longtime head of school who retired, and 2 heads of school came in who just did not work out. They were just bad fits for the school in the Valley, and put a bit of consternation in the school community from the employees and the parents and families who were sending their kids to the school. And so in 2005, I took over at St. Mary's, which, as you say, Susan, very true, is not a 15-branch library system. It's all on one campus, right? So, and although libraries are a part of running a school, they certainly are not the major part of running a school. So the experience there, it's not a perfect fit on top of running a library system. During my time at St. Mary's, many of you may know, we got very involved in the international student world. St. Mary's opened up, we have 9 campuses in China. I say we, even though I'm recently retired. I've still been at the school for 35 years. It's hard not to say we. I spent about 2 to 3 months a year in China. We had a management company that was doing the active day-to-day management of the school, but I used to make the rounds to those schools and then ended up getting hired as a consultant by that company called Knowledge Link, and was supervising over 20 schools in China with several hundred employees. So that is one side of my professional career that doesn't jump out on the resume. Most people who do know me locally know me as the former head of St. Mary's, but I spent quite a bit of time working for Knowledge Link, which was quite a large company, involved in most of the personnel and programmatic issues.
All right. So maybe you could describe, it sounds like you've moved into a variety of new environments, but can you describe how you've adapted to new environments and how you would approach learning about the issues that we're facing in this library system?
Yes, and Well, I really appreciate, by the way, I tuned in early and I listened to Josh, Ms. Letzinger. What a fine gentleman. And that was very insightful. And of course, he's got his finger on the pulse as an internal candidate. And that was great. Lovely man. Um, what I would do in new situations is, and at the risk of reiterating, but logically, you have to do these things. One of them is visiting all the branches, visiting with each of the employees. Looking at the budget, I could see 146 FTE, which is a large number, but not insurmountable to get to know everybody and to give everybody some face time. I would want to work closely with the management team, the financial director, community outreach, marketing, programmatic directors to come to understand their jobs. So there would be a lot of listening involved on my part early on. And that's the approach I took in going way back, learning the textile industry. And then when I became a head of school, I also had to learn a lot on the management side of running a school. So I inform myself. I do extra training. I did a mid-career master's of nonprofit administration to help me onboard some skills that I needed in order to do my job here locally and overseas. And so that's it: learning, talking, listening, reaching out to employees, and really coming to understand the nature of the entity and the service that's provided.
Sounds good. Patty.
Well, I'm sorry, Patty, you're muted.
Gotta unmute.
I apologize. Frank, I get to ask you the next two questions. And so there's 11 total. So it's manageable. Frank, what approach and steps, and you just, I think, addressed this, but maybe flesh it out a little more. What approach and steps would you take initially to get to know the staff? By the way, I'm very impressed that you know how many FTEs there are and you would intend to meet every one of them. But how you would get to know the staff, perhaps even more importantly, through that build cohesion and set priorities in an interim appointment.
Right. So I think there's a balance there. And, I'm well familiar with interim roles in the private school world, which is quite common when a longtime head of school leaves or if the head of school is terminated. Private schools face similar things where an interim is hired. And the expectation of the interim, usually by the board, is to kind of calm things down, right? Pour oil on the waters, meet with the employees, reassure them that things are moving forward in a good direction. There's a search for the new executive director, that somebody very qualified and a good fit will be hired, right? And that there's still a great deal. I've looked at what I can on the website. There's still seems like a great managerial staff still in place. And I know there are great branch librarians and other employees from facilities and maintenance. And so I would try to reassure the employees that everything's going fine as an interim. I'm not going to be here forever. My job is to listen. But also the interim, it can't ignore the managerial duties. There's a budget, right? The budget year is coming up. I'm sure there's a working budget being developed, but it's a sizable budget. It's a $16 million budget, roughly similar to what I was working with at St. Mary's School and less than that in the schools I was dealing with overseas. But that budget doesn't write itself. It needs a lot of review and work. And so it's a job that requires a lot of hours. I was used to I'm a little bit of a workaholic. I retired a bit earlier than I wanted to. So there are a lot of sometimes 12 and 14-hour days where you have to be out engaging with employees, listening to employees, evaluating all this information you're taking in, and at the same time, minding the shop, working with the managerial team on budget, facilities, personnel issues. So it's a balance, and it's not an easy position, either for an interim, I think, or for the executive director. So I will try and do both, to be a friendly face of the organization, to learn from the employees, and also to mind the shop, do the office work that's required with the rest of the managerial team to make sure the library district is running well.
Thank you for your answer very much. Frank, what is your philosophy on leadership? And if you can please share with us what it means to you to be both a good leader and a good team member, and how you would work with the administrative team to tackle day-to-day issues.
Yes. So I believe in that the executive director, president, CEO of any organization is kind of first among equals. The buck has to stop on somebody's desk. But after that, I believe in working like collegially with no inflated sense of self or position with everybody in the organization. I made a point when I was at St. Mary's that I always taught, even though I was extremely busy, because I didn't want my faculty not to feel that I was a fellow teacher, right? So I try to be out there with the troops, is my leadership style. I'm an old English and Latin teacher, so if you read the lives of the Caesars, one reason Julius Caesar was so popular with the soldiers was that he was out there with them on the campaigns, sleeping in tents, sleeping on the ground, talking to the common soldiers, right? And they didn't perceive him as some high and mighty figure above them. And I think that kind of just like common sense, courtesy, affability goes a long way in leadership. So that's on the team side too. And I also have just picked up, I can't remember from what class somewhere, that the best leaders of organizations are either optimistic pessimists or pessimistic optimists, that you're watching out for the entire entity. Whereas somebody, say a teen librarian at pick a branch, I don't want to pick a branch, right, is really concerned with the teen program at that branch. But as the executive director, you're looking at the whole ship, So as a leader, you've got to be there with your team, and you can't be too highfalutin, but you also have to mind the whole $15 or $16 million operation, which is taxpayers' money and providing vital services. So you kind of have to do it all as a leader.
Great. Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you. And you may have started touching on some of these topics already, but please do elaborate additionally. Would you please share what are your strengths and experience in personnel management and human resources? Perhaps a synthesis or additional examples, please.
Yeah. So going back over the 40-something years of my work life, where I've been, except for the years I spent teaching, I was in managerial positions. I've hired hundreds of people, and unfortunately, I've had to fire several dozen people at different organizations over the years. But in working with personnel, and if I'm straying off the question, Marta, feel free to rein me back in. I'm a people person. I like people, and I assume that everybody who shows up is actually trying to do their best at the job, and things go sideways sometimes. I believe in working early with employees who are having any issues, right? Coming to understand what the issues are, if necessary, giving those employees a chance to improve, right? To document, unfortunately, in this, we're all aware of the legal issues around HR, around employee terminations. And so while being humane and talking, right, to people and trying to work out the best outcome for the employee and putting them on improvement plans if need be, following up on those plans, giving the employee every chance to, remain an employee, a valued employee of the organization, as long as issues are being taken care of. And, terminating an employee is an extreme last, when things just don't work out, which they don't sometimes. But to have the paperwork trail and to have given the employees every chance to succeed, is my philosophy on personnel issues. And then on the flip side, for the vast majority of employees who just love their job and are showing up every day and just trying to do their best and enjoy being alive and having a workplace and a workplace family, to praise those employees, to highlight their contributions, to be like a family member with them, and to make sure that they know they're appreciated in the workplace.
Thank you. And I appreciate you also bringing in the flip side, because the disciplinary conversation, while important, that would have been a very weird one to transition to the next question on. And the next question, of course, being, would you please share with us your knowledge and skills working with the introduction of a new union, working with union employees, and or supporting an organization through a labor contract negotiation, such as what Jackson County Library Services is looking at in 2026?
Yeah, and I certainly wouldn't make up an answer to that one. I have no experience directly working with a union or working through contract negotiations. The closest the textile plant that I ran was a non-unionized plant. St. Mary's is not unionized, although the teachers could, Kevin. Now that I'm not there anymore, go for it. But I was on the Providence Hospital board for several years. We always had the nurses union representative sitting in on the board meetings. It was just a community board, so we were not involved as community board members with the actual terms of the contract negotiations with the Providence Hospital employees, particularly the nurses unions. But I certainly heard quite a bit about it. It was a frequent topic at board meetings. But that's the extent of my experience in working with union or contract.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you. How would you communicate and interact with staff and volunteers to assure they are valued and appreciated, and help them feel confident that JCLS will continue to thrive and grow?
Yeah. Thank you for that question, Marissa. So in dealing with employees, as I said, we highlight employees. And so both at St. Mary's and both at our schools overseas, we make sure that, or I used to make sure that everybody gets a turn to shine. So often I would send out internal communications, sometimes several a week, about what teachers or coaches or facility managers were doing really well at the school, and I made sure everybody got recognized, right? And I'm sorry, I missed, was there a part 2 of that question? Marissa, I'm sorry.
And help them feel confident that JCLS will continue to thrive and grow.
Yes, and then I had town hall meetings, full employee, faculty and staff meetings. I always tried to be as transparent as possible in presenting information about both the challenges that the entities I worked at were facing and the positive aspects. And so Jackson County Library Services, I've looked just at the website. I know the strategic plan is coming to an end in 2026. I assume there's a new strategic planning process, but it's quite a nice strategic plan. It seems in large part to be coming true. So the board and the staff have executed the strategic plan well. I try to, without violating any rules of financial, discretion, try to explain the finances of the organization to all the employees so they know what is and is not possible, right? And I think with the Jackson County Library System, from what I can see, that this is an unfortunate circumstance that has happened, but these things sometimes happen. But the organization seems to me to have really good processes in place. It's got a good tax base. The facilities, they're new to me because I've been in the Valley so long. It seems like the library bond passed like yesterday. I realize it's been quite a while and the facilities probably need some looking after. but it's a well-funded organization with excellent facilities and a great employee base, and there is no reason why it shouldn't go on to greatness. And I would get that message across the employees in every way I could, both by internal communications, digitally and in person in meetings. So I think ensuring the staff that the Jackson County Library Services is this best days are ahead of it is not the hardest task. I think you have great people in place, great funding in place, great facilities, and just need to work through this bump in the road here.
Thank you for that. So next question, the Jackson County Library District's mission is to connect everyone to information, ideas, and each other. What does that mean to you, and how would you work to support our mission?
Yeah, and as somebody coming from the outside, new to the world of large library systems, just again, looking through the website, which was my sole research, right, to see what I could ascertain. The district is offering a wonderful array of services and programs currently. So enhancing those services, continuing to offer the ones that seem to resonate with the stakeholders, right, the patrons of the system. Listening for new ideas and introducing new services, as long as they can be done within the budget, and are ways we would move forward. And I think, did I miss part of that question too? I'm sorry.
I mean, I can restate the part. Just
Yeah.
Again, the mission statement was to connect everyone to information, ideas, and each other. So I don't know if you wanted to add anything else to that, but I appreciate what you have said.
The only thing I would add, Marissa, is I just think libraries are more important than ever in the internet age, and with AI. They're community hubs. They're free. Not everybody can afford lightning fast internet service or downloading books, or they provide a vital service. The librarians are trained professionals at guiding people to accurate, good information sources, right? There are all sorts of services the library provides for helping people with job searches. And just as the world becomes, it's ironic we're on Zoom, but as the world becomes more and more digital, there are places where fit like that infamous third place where people can go and actually be in a room with other people in a kind of quiet, nice space that's full of the world's information and has trained professionals to guide you through it. So I think the library is just vital. And I think the district does a good job of getting that kind of message across now. And I would want to do whatever we could to enhance that message, to get even more community involvement, more patronage of the libraries.
All right. Kevin, you're up.
Mute.
Yep, I was just working on that. Thank you. Frank, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to anyway. Public libraries serve people, as you know, across the entire political and ideological spectrum here in Jackson County. And how would you ensure that that professional decisions remain neutral and focused on the community rather than our personal beliefs?
Sure. And yeah, the library is a kind of a Switzerland, right? It's neutral. The staff which curates the collection, right, and decides what programs to offer, should be offering programs that the community wants, or that prove to be popular with the community, even if the community didn't know they wanted that program sometimes. So, right, a librarian can introduce something that people really respond to, and there's just no place for the politicization of a library, right? Or either an individual library or the library as a system. So, and imagine scenarios where, where where a director may have to come to the board and discuss difficult things, like a certain group on either side of the political spectrum wanted to put on an event or use space for some purpose that might be inflammatory or controversial. And that's a decision, you guys serve on the board.
Yeah.
You have the executive director, and the board sets strategy and policy. So if there were very serious, difficult calls to be made along those lines, I think that would come up to a board meeting. But from what I can see on a day-to-day basis, the library does a nice job of maintaining that neutrality and being apolitical.
And you had dealt with differences among staff members, I assume, at St. Mary's as well.
Yeah. So not only staff members, Kevin, but there are a lot of stakeholders, right, in any organization, right? So you, the board of directors, there are the employees, the librarians, the patrons, the taxpayers, and it was the same thing in running a private school. The faculty, there's always a bell curve, right, from left to right politically. People who send their kids to private schools tend, on the whole, to be a little more conservative than the teachers that teach in the private schools. So there was a constant tension between what parents expected out of a curriculum and what teachers wanted to offer. But those things can be negotiated with, common sense and kindness and affability and openness. So.
Great, thank you. And then without, mentioning me specifically, can you tell us about a time that you had to deal with and resolve a difficult HR issue?
Yeah, there were several. One of the more difficult ones, and I don't want to, certainly not going to name names, but you might be able to figure this out, Kevin. But I had a key member of my management team, right? So basically in the finance department, but it was a key individual who I started to develop some alarming habits that were indicative of mental illness, and was missing more and more work, and facts and figures came to be more and more doubtful in their accuracy. And this was a otherwise good employee with the best interests of the entity at heart, but was unable to perform the job anymore, and was not willing to seek appropriate help. And so we did eventually get this person to seek the appropriate help, but while the person was trying to get back to good mental health status, we needed somebody to manage the finances of the school. So I had to let the person go, and that was difficult. But we worked through it, and to the satisfaction of all parties, with severance and, quite a fair package at the end. And the person got on the right track eventually and was reemployed at another school.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. So as we move toward winding this up, are there questions that you think we should have asked you that we haven't? And then, do you have questions for us?
A little both, Susan. Not really questions that you didn't ask me. At the interim, I've seen the job description, so I saw 4 to 8 months in the job description. So I'm wondering if what you're looking for as kind of like a work product from the interim director at the end of that time.
Well, at the end of that time, hopefully we will be in a position to move forward with a new long-term director. Hopefully we will have solved perhaps some problems that we're facing during the time of the interim directorship. But hopefully by the end, and I think we're trying to leave flexibility for the period of the interim directorship, because we're not entirely sure what all we need to get done. But I would like to see staff pulling together, morale having improved, and being ready really to move forward past this transitional period that's proving quite difficult.
Thank you.
Others on the board can add to that. Kevin?
Yeah, I think I might add that I don't think that's a hard number, that we realize that it may take longer in order to find the right candidate for, a permanent position. Meanwhile, we still have the budget, which is a very important thing, obviously, and I know you've got experience in that. We need to, find out what's going on with HR issues that we've, encountered, and then again, dealing with the union, I think is something that's going to be, important, making sure that we're on the right path, following all the legal steps along that way so we don't get in trouble, I think is some really important stuff.
Yeah.
I would like to real quickly add, Kevin, that's a great synopsis, is as you brought up, Frank, in one of the earlier conversations, that you have looked at the 5-year strategic plan, which is going to be ending. And so we're also going to be going through a new strategic planning process, a process for a new 5-year strategic plan. So I would add that to the list of important factors that we'll be dealing with.
Thank you, Patty. And that really was kind of my question is, as I'm a strong believer that organizations do not move forward without good strategic plans accompanied by a strategic financial plan with KPIs and measurable outcomes. And as an interim, the very word interim means you're not going to be there to oversee that strategic plan. But, I think as I was getting to know the system and working with people, I would love to have a little bit of input into that, or at least be able to leave for the board. Here's what I've discovered during my internship that might be helpful as you put together the next 5-year strategic plan.
That would be great. Marta, go ahead.
The interim director's term of service will mostly overlap with the development, creation, and implementation of the 12 to 18-month strategic roadmap. We're going to be likely delaying the development and implementation of a 5-year strategic plan until a permanent director is hired, so they can have input, footprint, and their strategic direction on it also. Due to the nature of the board and our relationship with the organization, we do not have, nor necessarily should we have, the personnel management insight, oversight, and control over everything the director would make sure runs smoothly. So I'm really seeking the interim director to step into that personnel management authority, because while we can check on how people are doing, none of the leadership staff reports to us on their own opportunities, challenges, priorities. Sometimes they do, but that's a director / leadership staff and staff relationship. And so somebody to step in, because there is a trifecta: staff, board, director. It is prescribed, it is very rigid, and we are missing one of the 3 legs of that stool.
Right. Thank you for that, Mark. That's well explained. Yeah.
Yep. So, anybody have further questions or comments that they'd like to make? Or Frank, if you have any final comments you'd like to address to the board, that would be fine. We've hurried through this a little bit for you, so we have a little time left if you'd like to talk some more. Or
no, I would just say, just to respond a little bit, Marcy, to your comment. I understand that kind of wall between the employee base and the board, and I'm well aware of this. That the board's job is not, if somebody's complained about a librarian in Ashland, to take that up at the board level, right? That's the job of the director, to deal with the employees and to report to the board as necessary. So I think you guys really do have good systems in place, and it's very professional. So I appreciate that. I don't have, I would say, just as a member of the general Rogue Valley public, I've been in the Valley since 1989. I've been here longer now than in my native New England. And I really just care about the Valley. And I haven't dug deep on any of the controversy except what's available on the local news stations and everything. Where is employee morale on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being everybody is completely shell-shocked by what's happened, to 10 being they're kind of shrugging it off and ready to move forward? And maybe that's a little too direct of a question for this venue, but
I'm not sure we can give you an actual answer, an accurate answer. I would say that morale is that they aren't just shrugging it off. And I think to some extent the board needs to rebuild its relationship with the employees, and hopefully the interim director will help us with that.
Yeah.
But so different parts of the staff are probably at different morale levels. Or do you wanted to weigh in here?
And that's a great answer, Susan. Thank you. I know that question kind of put, there's no way you can figure out what 146 FTEs are all thinking individually about things, but I really just appreciate that. The question was purely out of curiosity. Just wondering.
Marty, your hand's up.
Yes, the most recent pulse point on the entire staff's staff level sentiment we have is over a year old now. It was part of a climate survey. And so do we have tools to measure it? Yes, but it would have to be a very concerted effort. I don't think individual board members have a really great grasp of all across the organization. But we know that there is room for improvement, and we acknowledge it. And we want to have the third prong of the approach to governance, such as the director first in place as an interim and then a permanent one. We know that there is a reason why that system exists, and we want to offer that administrative support to our leadership and the rest of the staff.
Thank you.
Yeah, Frank, I'm going to intend to ask all of the candidates about this, but basically, would there be any hindrance to you starting or ramping up pretty quickly if we were to choose?
Nope, I'm free. I was working overseas until last June, doing work for the company I mentioned, Boston in China. So I was traveling frequently, but in June I officially retired from that position as well. So I am a free agent.
Awesome, thanks. Let's see.
Any further words from anyone?
I want to thank you again, Frank, for coming to talk to us today, and really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank, have you ever been in an interview with 30 other people in the room?
Oh, no. It's kind of fun.
I have. I think it may be of interest to those who are still tuned in. I had a chance to go to a library chief officers of state library agencies event this week, and when I shared that this is the format, folks were either very astonished, saying it's not done often, and then I had a handful of folks, including somebody from Washington, saying, no, that's actually quite common. So it really depends on one's context of work. It is very much done in some contexts and not done at all in others, even in the library world, as I learned.
That's the big. Go ahead. Keep going.
Oh no, it's a great open process. I'm assuming most of the people on are employees, but I think having this open is a really great thing, and I think it's a great step toward building morale back up. So doing it behind closed doors is probably worse than doing it this way. And again, kind of signing off. That thank you for your service on the board. I have 3 kids who are now adults who, I drag them to the library all the time, especially to the team and the children saying back when it was in the old Carnegie building. So I just appreciate the work that you guys are doing on the board. It's not easy. You can kind of come in for a lot of criticism, I would imagine, having served on a lot of boards myself, but I also appreciate the work of the employees and just the obvious care and concern people have about what is really a large and very nice library system. So thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your interest and your willingness to bring all your many skills to bear on our system. Was that a hand going up, Marissa? No. All right, then we will take a break now.
To the co-host, maybe we can change Rob's window Zoom name from what it is to Rob. Just for clarity for those watching.
I'll see what I can do. I think he can also change it.
Okay. Not required. We will begin shortly. In the meanwhile, I have a small public service announcement, which I'll also be forwarding to the library leadership. One of the other libraries in Oregon that uses Libby had patrons report that there is a potential email scam. They just haven't investigated it yet, where the email from whoever the actor is may be requesting payment information in a scam. So just a reminder that Libby ebooks and audiobooks are free with your library card, and you will never be asked to provide payment information to access them. Just a small PSA. I just learned about this on the break while we were on our laptops. That's all. Thank you.
Hey, Rob.
Kevin, how are you?
I'm good. All right. It is funny. It says Tina.
Yeah, I know. My wife and I share this computer, and I think she was the last one to use it, so my apologies.
It's better than showing up as a cat like that one guy.
Truly.
Susan, you're muted.
All right. Now it says I'm muted, but you can hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Well, good evening, Rob. My name is Susan Kiefer. I'm the president of the Library District Board, and I've been on this board for a long time. So, and Kevin, you're up.
I'm Kevin Keating. I'm the vice chair of the board, and I've been on here for, I don't know, a few years, but I was on the budget committee before that, and glad to have you here.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Patty Jensen, and I'm the newest member of the board. I began on July 1st of 2025, and I'm loving it.
Okay. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Good afternoon and welcome, and thank you for your interest in our interim director opportunity. My name is Marta Terence, and I've been serving on the Jackson County Library District Board since first being appointed in July 2024, and then subsequently after being voted into my position in May of 2025.
Okay. Good to see you.
You as well.
And then Marissa Shepard, I've been on the board for a few years, and then I also teach at RCC, and it's nice to meet you.
Same here.
All right. Well, thank you for your interest in this position, and we will commence directly. Can you tell us some more about the background and skills that qualify you for this position as our interim director of the library district, in addition to, and you might flesh out what's on your resume and then add anything that's not on your resume that you think might contribute as well.
Certainly. Most of my experience was in California. I ran a large agency for the County of Riverside called the Economic Development Agency, but one of the components of it was the Riverside County Library System, which was added after I assumed the leadership of that agency. That system had, at the time I took over, about 32 branches. We actually ended up expanding it by 4. Some of them were county libraries. Some were city libraries operated under contract with the county. I was pretty involved in setting up that program and very familiar with the entire system, and worked closely with the prior director to ensure that the legacy of good work that he had done was continued. Had a lot of pretty innovative approaches to library management. Had gone into a system where there was a lending, there was cross lending between other systems throughout the state. So the collection was increased to about the access was increased, I think, to 23 million volumes, and a lot of other sort of collateral material, digital material. We also, at that time, I was also running the county's workforce development system. So we added workforce development components to some of the library branches where it was going to be effective and appropriate. So I gained an appreciation for what all libraries can be. It's not just a place to check out a book. They are multimedia centers. They are community centers, and we deliberately designed our newer libraries, and where we could, we retrofitted older libraries to incorporate facilities that would encourage community use for other types of uses. And it's one of the things I've noticed actually about the Jackson County system. I got a pretty comprehensive tour of the downtown Medford branch and was impressed by the versatility of the facility. I've been to a couple of special events there, and it's one of the better laid out, one of the better libraries I've seen, actually. But my prior experience really aligned closely with what the Jackson County Library System is all about. As the system I ran before was analogous to the one that you all have.
Right. What experience do you have adapting to a new environment, and how will you approach learning about the issues that confront the Jackson County system while you're here?
Well, I think a lot of it comes with getting to know the people. There are systems that you need to learn about. There's certainly, and the budget, of course, is critical. I've looked at your budget, and it's looks like it's in pretty good shape. You have decent reserves, and it looks to be well managed. But a lot of it is people driven, and so it's investing the time to get to know the staff and visiting each of the branches. Not you need to. I mean, it's a big system. You have I think 15 libraries in your system, so getting to know, visiting each of them, getting to know staff at each of them, and getting familiar with what the characteristics are of each library and what it is about each library that appeals to the community that it serves. So I think a lot of it has to do with investing the time to get to know the people who are running the system. And actually, it's one of the things that's kind of enjoyable, at least for me. So that's a big part of it. But also just doing all the background work to learn the budget, to get to know each of you as board members, and learn what the priorities are that the board has. You set the policy, the staff implements policy. So important to understand, know, recognize, and do it as much as possible to realize the policy goals that the board sets. And always, of course, being mindful. Budget, you don't want to think that it's a pretty important thing. It's not something that you can afford to ignore. So, spending a lot of time and getting really familiar with the budget. So, sort of a comprehensive look at the entire system.
All right.
Hi, Robert. I get to ask you the next 2 questions, and just so you know, there will be 11 total.
Okay.
So you're getting close to being halfway there.
Okay.
Okay, you're 2 questions in, but whatever.
Okay.
Okay.
No worries.
So, my first question is, what approach and steps would you take initially? You were talking about how important it is. You mentioned several times how important it is to know the staff and visit all the branches. How would you go beyond that to build cohesion and set priorities in an interim appointment?
I think part of it's going to be driven by the communities that are being served by the libraries. So getting to know leadership in those communities, who's involved, who's engaged, really interested in how the libraries function. So getting to know the folks in the community that are being served. At the end of the day, they're the customer, and they're the ones that need to be made happy. And spending as I even reverting back to the staff. I mean, I think a lot of times it's important to get the staff, not just to get to know the staff, but get to know get their input. Find out what exactly it is they think is going well and what could be added or modified, and even in some cases discontinued, depending. So I think it's really a lot of it is going to be staff driven, but really ultimately is there's community involvement, community engagement, and that's one of the things that strikes me about this community. The various communities that make up this county is that there is a lot of community engagement. So making sure that those folks' input is received and taken into consideration as the libraries move forward. And again, ensuring programs match up. Don't just offer a program because you think it's a good idea. Offer programs that matter to the community, that will make a difference there. Because that's one of the great things about libraries. They can make a significant difference in communities. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that's great. And as Marta always reminds us that we, as you just described, Robert, we have in those 15 branches, we have urban and rural. So it's quite diverse.
Yes.
Okay, and my second question is, what is your philosophy on leadership? And what I'm asking is, what does it mean to you to be both a good leader and a good team member? And how would you work with the administrative team to tackle day-to-day issues?
Well, I think it takes a certain. I mean, for a while there was a lot of talk about leaning in. It's sort of leaning into the organization, and showing, demonstrating, and I think it's important to demonstrate interest. Part of the way you do that is understanding and learning what it is that is happening in each of the branches in this example. So knowing what that and demonstrating that you care enough to invest the time, to understand what it is that is happening in each one of the branches. There's a lot to learn in a fairly short time, but I think it's something that's pretty vital. That I think shows that's one way of showing leadership is by demonstrating that you cared and making sure that you were listening, taking notes, doing your best to remember everybody's name. That could be a challenge in a big system, but that sort of stuff I think speaks volumes. And being candid, being honest, just telling people exactly what you're thinking, so that people don't have to wonder, but also giving honest feedback to the people who are working in each of the branches. I think is really important. And hearing them out. So those are all things I think that go into serving as a good leader. Speaking of which, I mean, there's a lot of talk about servant leadership. I mean, it's one of the things that's pretty important is to make it clear that you understand, what the goal is, what the purpose is, especially in public service. I mean, it's really important. It's in the name. We're serving the public. So that's part of it too, is, demonstrating it. So not just talking it, but walking it.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you so much, Robert.
Of course.
Yes, thank you. And the next couple of questions will come from me, and perhaps you've touched on some of these topics before, so we're looking for perhaps an additional synthesis or other examples.
Okay.
Would you please share with us what are your strengths and experience in personnel management and human resources?
I think I think it does kind of go back to a couple of things I mentioned before, is making sure that when you're talking about human resources, you're not talking about resources, you're talking about humans. You're actually investing the time to get to know the folks who are, this is what people do for a living. And especially in a situation like this where where it's an interim position, it's important. I think it's really important to show that you're not going to treat it just like an interim position. It's not just a stop on the way to someplace else. You invest the time in it now as if it's going to be your forever job, and make sure that staff understands that and the community members understand that. And it goes back to learning what all is going on in the system. And what people's interests are. So I think that's a big part of it. Is it's just an investment of time, and then being willing to get out there. You put yourself on the line a little bit. Even just going through this process, you put yourself on the line a little bit. There's some vulnerabilities. Let's face it. And this process is public. So you need to be prepared to accept some risk. And I think that's a big component of it too, is not being so risk averse, that you're not willing to take chances and make recommendations and engage in public dialogues, to make it clear that you care enough to make that effort.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. A few minutes before we went into the break, before our interview, we discussed how frequent or infrequent it is for some organizations to have a process open at this phase like this. So we hear you. The next question is, what is your knowledge and the skill base in working with the introduction of a new union, working with union employees, and supporting an organization through a labor contract negotiation, which is something JCLS is looking at in 2026?
I have had a lot of opportunities to interact with various types of unions, all in the public sector. Everything from associations like sheriffs and police associations. I've worked with LIUNA and SEIU. I've also worked with smaller units that were dedicated associations within smaller units of government, like in the city of San Bernardino. So I've worked a great deal and negotiated a number of new agreements. When I first got San Bernardino is a great example. When I first got there were 6 units. They were all out of contract and had been for 18 months, between 18 months and 2 years, because the city had been in bankruptcy. Still was in bankruptcy, by the way, but that didn't mean we couldn't conclude agreements. So negotiated 6 at once. I don't recommend that. That was a heavy lift. But it actually worked out pretty well because we were able to get everybody sort of on the same page. I mean, public safety has certain requests where other representation units have different requests that wouldn't be the case here. But certainly, having walked through that and been involved in labor negotiations at different levels pretty much throughout my career, I'm very comfortable with it and have a lot of experience with it and have some pretty good approaches that are a little unusual, but actually I think tend to sort of get the process through more quickly than might otherwise be the case. We concluded all those negotiations in San Bernardino in less than a year, which is like lightning speed for union negotiations, especially when you're starting from from basically like zero. So so I've got a fair amount of experience with that.
Thank you very much.
All right, I have the next question. How would you communicate and interact with staff and volunteers to ensure they are valued and appreciated and help them feel confident that JCLS will continue to thrive and grow?
That's a great question, especially considering the circumstance. I think it is going to require a lot of that personal touch and showing the interest and making certain that people understand that there's nothing that's happened is a reflection on them. They're valued, I think, by the board. They're valued by the interim director, and just ensure that work is a safe place. That's one of the things that can sometimes, go by the boards a little bit. So, I think that's a big part of it. And that starts with getting out and getting to know the folks. I mean, the branch managers, librarians are really important. But those aren't the only folks you talk to. So you just, and make sure to get out of the office, get into the branches and speak to people and reassure them. This isn't, this position. I mean, I've known of positions like this being filled before, where it was partly to facilitate change. I don't get the sense necessarily that that's the case here, because I think to a large extent the system's working really well. And your budget is in good shape, and you have, I think there's just a lot to be proud of, and just making sure that the staff knows that that's the case, that's what the role of this position is to support them and make sure that, because their success is everybody's success. So making sure that they have the tools they need to be successful is going to be a big part of it.
Thank you for that answer. And then the last one from me is the Jackson County Library District's mission is to connect everyone to information, ideas, and each other. What does that mean to you, and how would you work to support our mission?
A little bit like what I said in the intro, treating libraries is more than just libraries. I mean, I think there's sort of an old school, there's some folks who view libraries through like an old school lens. I don't. I think that they are great conduits for various types of literacy programs, financial literacy, all kinds. I mean, they're all digital literacy. There's all kinds of different types of programs that can be offered through libraries. The facilities sort of lend themselves, especially the newer ones, which have public space that's designed to, that's intended to serve as points of convening. I think those provide great opportunities to make additional programming available and maximize the utilization of the facility itself, but also the skills of the staff, and giving them the opportunity to shine and show the innovative approaches to doing different stuff, and maybe even inviting like the workforce system in. As I said, in Merced County, they were almost adjunct workforce development centers. So you could come in and, do job searches, learn to do a resume, all kinds of different stuff. So I think looking for opportunities to broaden the role. And also, I think it also improves, the relevance of libraries just in everybody's daily lives, is to make it clear that they're a good place for a lot of different things, not just a place to go check out a DVD or a book. So I think that'd be a big part of it.
Thank you.
All right, Rob. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Great. All right, my turn here. We are a purple county, as you know, in a very highly charged political atmosphere. And public libraries, our Jackson County Library, serves people across the political and the ideological spectrum. How would you ensure that the decisions that you make would remain focused on the entire community rather than your personal beliefs?
I think it's important, first of all, to kind of go back just to remember what the role of government, government is, local government. The boards, your board is, basically nonpartisan, and ensuring that sort of that perspective is reflected in the way that libraries are managed, not showing preference to any one group or ideology or anything else, but ensuring that understanding of the mission is, and you have a very clear mission, vision, values statement, making sure that is the guiding principle, not any sort of personal perspective or agenda or anything else. So it's, it can be a challenge. I mean, people are really passionate, especially these days, about different things, but I think it's important to do your level best to keep that, to keep those kinds of perspectives, a little bit in check, and understand what the purpose of the library system is. It's a point of convening for positive things. It's a place for people to learn. Great places for children to be able to go and investigate the world, investigate the universe. So I think it's important to keep that kind of perspective, and try not to allow too much of the outside noise to filter in. But I will grant you, it is absolutely a challenge everywhere you look these days. So,
thanks. Great. Maybe you could tell us, so we can get to know you better. Maybe you could tell us about a time you've had to deal with a difficult issue at work, something that you also resolved, and maybe that'll give us an idea of how you could do the same with us.
Well, it starts with not having a knee-jerk reaction. I think just look at the totality of the situation as best you can, and see what a path, try and devise a reasonable path forward. Frequently, that depending on the nature of the circumstance, that would involve human resources, maybe the attorney for the district, in this case, to make certain that and set something up where there's a problem for the district. So I think it starts with that, but also being open and listening to what the perspectives of the different parties are. That's frequently the case. I mean, if there's an issue, frequently there's a complainant, and you need to hear everybody out. So I think it's important to take a thorough look at whatever the circumstance is, not immediately decide what the outcome is going to be or what the resolution is going to be, and make a reasoned and explainable, defensible, devise a reasonable, defensible solution. And in personnel matters, there's a lot of transparency you can't have, right? So, but to the extent possible, certainly be transparent. And when it is something that's going to rise to the board's level, for example, making sure to keep the board apprised, let folks know what it is that's going on, so that it's important not to be surprised, I think, in circumstances like that. So I think that's a big part of it as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right.
However, wait. Okay,
Yes.
I'm calling you on it, Brand. Yes, and we're still looking for a specific example.
Okay.
Without using names.
Without using names, yeah. Okay. It was with a public safety department. There was somebody who was given to bad behavior, extraordinarily bad behavior, and was had been promoted beyond their, what's it, the Peter principle? I mean, had been promoted beyond the level of their incompetency. It was really difficult because this person was extremely engaged, had a community face on top of everything else. Ultimately though, the behavior, and it was a pretty lengthy process, but ultimately the determination was that it was not termination but demotion, which led to all sorts of consternation in the affected department. And it was a lengthy process that did, in fact, actually it ended up in litigation, unfortunately. But we prevailed because we had done a thorough job. We had everything documented, and that's part of it too. That's why you engage the human resources director and the attorney to ensure that all of those that everything is done the way it is supposed to be done, which can be a challenge because it's not, a lot of the stuff's counterintuitive. But the rules are usually, actually, especially when you have good professionals behind you, the rules are pretty clear. So, it was a protracted process too. It took us 6 months to get through it, to the point where litigation was filed. So, and there are special protections typically for public safety officers anyway. So, wouldn't happen necessarily in the library district, but it was a great learning experience. Knowing how thorough you needed to be, how closely everything had to be documented. I mean, I knew that before because I've been managing people for a long time, but this was an extra level of documentation, an extra level of effort, and a much more public than it ought to have been. That wasn't our choice. That was the subject's choice to make it a more public process. But it was, it was contentious. And but I think the resolution that was reached was equitable. It was fair. So just took a while to get there.
Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it.
Yep, my pleasure. Sorry I didn't include that in the first part.
No problem.
All right. It's our job to make sure that you answer the questions, I guess.
Absolutely.
So, are there questions that you think we should have asked you in order to determine your suitability for this position? And in addition to that, are there questions that you have for us?
Well, one I would certainly have for you is, how, well, two. First of all, how long you think this interim position is going to last? That's one, and then a second one would be whether or not you would want the interim to be helpful in the process with respect to choosing the permanent. Because I have been involved in a lot of executive recruitment, so that could be something. I don't know, but first of all, but how long do you think it's going to take, and then or last rather, and if you'd want assistance for the second part.
Well, we've said that we've set a 4 to 8 month period to allow ourselves some flexibility depending on how things go. I mean, one of the things that we're looking, since there's been some publicity about our transition, we are hoping that we can let the dust settle. And I think there's been a fair amount of turmoil amongst the staff. And one of the things that we hope the interim director will do will be to work on getting the staff more cohesive as a team and to sort out the differences. It seems to me that there are some divisions that hopefully whoever comes into this position will be able to work at team building across the whole scheme of things. We haven't really talked a whole lot yet about what our process for hiring the permanent director is or when it will start. But I imagine that there might be some role for you to play in that area.
Okay.
And my colleagues can fill in around the edges or straighten out my answer too. Kevin.
Yeah, as we said to another candidate, I mean, it is flexible. We are going to, again, we don't know exactly what we're doing with hiring the executive director yet. We haven't begun the process, I should say. And I personally would love your experience, as helping in that. But then, as we have said before, it's also the budget, it's the union negotiations, and there should be quite a bit on your plate. And I think 4 to 8 is, again, hopeful, but not necessarily going to be the case. We'll see.
Yeah, and I didn't come into this with the notion of it's got to be a set term or anything else. So frequently say don't really have an expiration date in mind. So so whatever, serving at the pleasure of the board anyway. So be it certainly it's something a topic of conversation to be sure.
And Mark, could you speak to the strategic planning and the bridge process?
I'm sorry?
Yes. Patty's suggesting I'm bringing something up.
Oh.
We are looking for the interim director to help develop and adopt and implement the 12 to 18 month strategic roadmap.
Okay.
We are coming up on the timeline to start creating the next 5-year strategic plan. That said, we want the permanent director's fingerprints all over it, and as well as their strategic direction and coalition building, you name it. At the same time, the 12 to 18 month roadmap window might give us a chance to finish out some key initiatives from the plan we're about to finish out. So support there will be great, and leadership.
Okay.
I will touch on the recruitment part. It's no secret that for the permanent library director, it's possible that we will focus on searching with somebody with significant librarianship experience. Mm-hmm. So my personal wish would be, as long as the interim is not applying and actively pursuing the permanent position, for them to be very actively involved as that go-between and a key part of a three-leg or three-prong approach, right? Like a three-legged stool approach to where there is input from the interim director, from the board, and staff and leadership.
Okay. That makes a whole lot of sense. Absolutely.
All right, then. If you don't have any other questions for us, I think we're about ready to wrap this up. I expect we have a deliberative process. Hopefully we will know more what direction we're headed. So we will be being in touch with you short. Oh, Kevin, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did have just one more clarification, if you could help me with this, Rob. Just so you've had, I mean, a lot of negotiation experience with the unions, but that was you directly speaking with the union, right? Not HR. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. HR, actually, we had kind of a unique approach. We had HR and finance in the room. That actually accelerated the process a lot. Most people don't do that, but that way we didn't have to break, say we'll see each other in 2 or 3 weeks and come back. We were able to answer a lot of the questions on the financial side in real time in the meetings. So it was a 3-person group, but I was in all those sessions.
And have you ever had experience with employees beginning a union or starting a union?
It wasn't starting, but it was transitioning from one to another. It was from an association into the association voted to go into SEIU. And so we had to be involved in that, in the transition from an association to a national scale union, which had its own challenges. I will confess, but it ended up working out okay. But it was analogous to what you're talking about.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
I have a follow-up question on your comment, and thank you for sharing a lot of your insights and expertise you gained and exercised it in California for a large portion of your career. You're in Oregon now. You've been here for quite some time now. Can you please share what you basically had to brush up on in terms of labor laws or governance in the public sector that could be specific to Oregon that you didn't necessarily have to touch in California? Would you say you have adopted fully to being in the public sector in Oregon?
I think I have, to the extent that I've been I've had to engage in that. I don't. A lot of the labor law stuff is sort of common between California and Oregon. The real difference between Oregon and a lot of other states is the way that government financing works. That was the issue that I've had to spend more time learning about, and also just the sort of the general lay of the land in the way that, especially municipal government at the county level and the city level, functions in Oregon as opposed to other Western states. A little bit unique. So that's the area where I've really had to brush up, spend some time getting to know how things operate. So that's the big. But in terms of labor relations, labor negotiation, those are fairly common between the two states. So I didn't have to learn a whole lot about that.
Thank you for clarifying. We learned from the county commissioner presentation last year that there are still residents in Jackson County who are operating on the legacy memory of Jackson County operating the library districts, who call the county with questions or concerns or questions about open hours. So thank you.
Yeah, that's one of the great things about my prior experience was that because I ran a system, it didn't have a separately elected board, but it was a separate system, and it was contracted with cities and also had county facilities. So it was really a hybrid, and you have to learn a lot in a real hurry, and do stuff, be flexible, understand what the differences are, because the communities were all different, having to learn the characteristics of each community too. So it was not identical to the Jackson County experience, but it was similar, and really not. So when I was looking at the descriptions on your website, it looked really familiar to me. It was not something that didn't appear to be something I couldn't learn about and work in.
Thank you.
All right. Any other last words from anyone? All right.
I just want to thank you again for taking an interest in serving in this position and for coming this evening. Thank you.
And I appreciate your time too. Thank you.
Thank you, bro.
Okay.
It's been great getting to know you a little bit and have you express your interests. And I think you have a lot of skills that would be useful to us. So we will wrap this up. I think the board can hang around for a few minutes while we figure out what our next step is. And we will be in touch early next week.
Sounds good. Great. Thank you.
All right.
And this is still a public meeting, so those online, you're still welcome to keep listening in. This is continuing to be a recorded public meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
But I will sign off. So,
All right.
okay.
You may do that.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We have noticed an 11 o'clock meeting for Monday. And we can either, I don't know if you want to do a straw poll or whether we want to just finish filling out our interview sheets for each one, get the scores gathered so that we can discuss all that on Monday. That seems to me to be the best course, since we have 3 candidates and in theory scored interview sheets. I think it'd be good to use them. Eddie, yes. What would you like?
I just want to share that this has been an incredible experience. These are 3 really wonderfully qualified and caring candidates. And thank you to the people on our board who encouraged them to come forward. And I'm really pleased with all 3 of them. So.
Ditto.
Yep. I'm checking about the 11 a.m. on Monday. I have not heard about that, so I'm going to make sure that I can be there. I like the approach of having the scored sheets turned in. I can do 11 to 11:45.
All right. Hopefully we would. Hey, Bryn, are you still around?
Yes, I am.
How do you have suggestions about getting these sheets gathered and scored and all of that? Do you have any advice for us on this one?
Yeah, if you all want to total your scores and email them to me, I'll compile a spreadsheet. That way you have that specific data to review on Monday. You will need to keep your note sheets as well. We would need to keep a record of that per law.
Can we send in the values that we've assigned to each question? And can you, because sometimes I think it would be interesting to know where people are strong in a particular area rather than just their total score.
So data by question.
Yeah. Is
We
that,
can do that.
that would be more helpful than just a total score.
We can do that.
Yeah, because
So-
it's only almost 7 o'clock on Friday and we're meeting at 11 on Monday. You go, girl.
All right, well, she's the boss. Maybe she can hand that one off.
Here's hoping.
So can we get all of this information to Bryn by Sunday night at the latest? And then you have at least a couple hours in the morning.
Yes.
Does
Yeah.
that work?
Yes.
Yeah.
And while there is always room for sending in a correction, I encourage all of us to do it while the memory of the candidates is fresh.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Does that wrap us up then? Are there things we should do in addition? All right, then. Thank you all, and thank all of you members of the gallery who invested the time to learn about these candidates. We appreciate your interest and your and your devotion to the libraries and our getting a good person into this position.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it is Staff Appreciation Day.
By all means.
Yes.
Yes. That said, I hope the staff will forgive us for being very much laser focused on this process and not starting our meeting with that. So
Yes.
we
Thank
hope it was a
you.
good Staff Appreciation Day for everybody. Thanks, everybody.
We appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I think we're
Thank
done.
you, everyone.
I think we can adjourn this meeting then.